This is Gemara Sanhedrin and Daf Chof Aleph. I'll learn for this month, the month of Teves. Has been generally sponsored as Lezchot Aliyas Neshama for Rav Aryeh ben Rav Ya'akov and B'siyata Dishmaya. The Koyach HaTorah should bring Rav Aryeh ben Rav Ya'akov a complete Aliyas Neshama to a higher place in Gan Eden Shalmailo. As well as the learning should be an incredible Schos Refuah Shalema for Tinaik ben Miriam Ahuva. We are holding 4 lines to the bottom of the Chafam Abayz as we quote the Mishnah that teaches us Pirates Lasses Leiderech. We continue to discuss the halachas of a melech, of a king. And the Mishnah taught us that the king can make a road, and the Mishnah continued and said that the spoils of war are given to the king first. Tana Rabbanan explains the Gemara 3 lines to the bottom. It says, Mlacham the melech, Sharbi Zeshabayz in Mechsel Mechselam, the Eitra is HaMelech. That when a different kingdom is captured, the treasures taken, and that goes entirely to the king. But Shar Biza, other spoils, Mechsel Melech, and Mechsel goes half to the king and half to the people. Amalei Abayel Rav Dimi v'Amalei Rav Acha B'Ishlama. Says the Melech, that I can understand why. Or Chadamilsa, that's the normal way that the king gets the king's stuff. And where do we know that to be true? Says the Gemara, as we learned, as we turn over to Chaval V'Manal V'Yimshachil Hashem, the Yishachil Hashem, the Nagidul Tzaddik, they appointed him as a prince to Hashem and Tzaddik as a Kayin. From here we learn now, Makish Nagid Tzaddik, Matzadim Mechsalayu, Mechsalachav, Avnagin, Mechsalayu, Mechsalad. Says the Gemara, Vesali Gufei Minal, where do we know he gets half? There, Tanya, Rebbe Omer, Vayisil Aaron Labanov, Mechsal Aaron, Umechsa Labanov. So explains the Gemara that we see from Aaron HaKohen already that half goes to him and half goes to his children, and that's where we can learn out that Tzaddik will be the same, and the Kahanim, and everyone else will get the other half. Continues the next Mishnah, the halachas of a king, a king should not have many wives, should not increase women. Ella Shemaina Esrei, rather only 18 wives. Rav Yehuda Omer, Mar Behulai, he can have as many as you want. Ubelvad, provided Shleim Misirais Eslibai, as long as as many wives as he has, does not take away his heart from Hashem. Even one woman that takes one's heart away, you should not marry. If one takes his heart away from Hashem, what do we learn now from this pasuk? That even if the many wives are incredible people, like Abigail, still the Mishnah is teaching us a king should not have more than 18 wives. Says the Gemara Lemeimra. To Rav Yehuda Darish time of Dekra, V'Shimon Lo Darish time of Dekra. From the Mishnah, it sounds like Rav Yehuda is explaining the reasoning that it has to do that you can't marry too many women. Why? Mesiras es libai. That because the wives take away one's heart from serving Hashem, and Rav Shimon holds fakir. But says the Gemara, we learned the opposite. The Tanya we learned in the Brayz, Salman ben Shu'aniya ben Ashira, ein mimashchen asai. And Almana, whether she is wealthy, whether she is poor, we do not take a mashkin from her. Shenemar, Loisachbal, Began Almana, Divi Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda does not care about whether she's wealthy or not. Eloi Darish, time of Dekra. Rav Shimon comes along and he's yes, Darish, time of Dekra. Ashir is Mimashchanasaniya, Ein Mimashchanasai. That the pasuk that says you don't take a mashkin from Almana is only because she is poor. Vata B'chayev Lachzir Lai, Vata Mesiya Shem Rabbi Shechanusah. And we said, what exactly are we referring to? The last 2 details that you have to return to her and you have to make sure she doesn't have a bad name. Because you take a mashkin, you have to give it back to her and you give a bad name in the city. But what do you see, says the Gemara? You see and the last narrow line, Alma Rav Yehuda Lo Darish time Dekra, V'Shimon Darish time Dekra. Astira answers the Gemara, Be'alma Rav Yehuda Lo Darish time Dekra. V'Shayni Hacha, our case is different. Why is our case different? Explains the Gemara, the Mefarish time of the Ikra. Ma tam le'arba l'nashim misham le'as levav. Rav Shimon Omer l'cha mechti. Shimon holds fakert. That ba'alma we are yes darsh time of the Ikra. And Kain l'chtav Ikra le'arba l'nashim v'lishtaik. Rav Shimon always explains the reasoning of the pasuk. So says Rav Shimon over here, we should have said stam le'arba l'nashim, and that's it. You don't need to have anything else. Vana Amina, and I would say that what is the reason? Matam li'arba misham lo yaser. Lo yaser lamli. Why does the Torah have to say the line of lo yaser that should not remove your heart from serving Hashem? No, even one that you don't, it takes one's heart away. You should not marry it. Elamani mekayim. So what do we do with the first part of the pasuk? Mani mekayim lo yarbe. Shouldn't have many wives. Dafilu kavigayol. Even like Abigail, you should have. So that's machlekes of Yud and Rav Shimon. Continues the Gemara, Hani Shemaina Esrim Nalan. Where do we get the number 18? That the king should not have more than 18 wives. Dachsev, Vayoldu LeDavid Banim B'Chevron, Vahi B'Chayr Amnon Achinoim Israelis. It says the pasuk that David HaMelech had the B'char bore to him from Achinoim Israelis. Umishneu Kilav Lavigayel Shanavel Karmeli Vashlishi Avshalom ben Machav Ravi. The fourth is Adriya ben Chagis Chamish Shaftir ben Navitel Veshishi Yitral leEglas Ishes David Elo Yaldu leDavid Chavern V'Karmeli Navi Imat V'Siv Lecha Keina Shes. So Keina Shes he had another 6. David Tamni Sari. So we had on 2 more 6s with original 6, and therefore you get 18 wives that one should not have. Maskala Ravina on the 4th Y line, 1 second. Ema Kani Tarti Isri. Kani Esim Arba. As Ravina understand, why don't we say that Kahani is another 6 is 12. And Ukahani is another 6. And therefore we're going to have, Kahani then doubles that. So we shall have 24. Says the Gemara. And it should be fine to the sheet in a brace. So explains the Gemara. Then it should be 48. Where does our Tana come from? And never not 29, but 18. Ask the Gemara of Avi Michael. Amarav Egola Zu Michal V'Lomanik Shmai Egla Shechaviva Alea Kagala V'cheinu Eimer Luli Chashertem Agolasi V'Goimer V'Layavi Michal B'ni Michal didn't have any children except for Michal V'Shol Layo Le'Vlad Adiyai Maisai Amarav Chista Adiyai Maisai Le'Haya. It's true. She'd have children to the day she died. Babi Maisai Hayala Mechti Bana Michal Kachashav La B'Chevron V'Ila Maisai Michal V'Yishlayim. It says that she had children in Chevron. But we know the story with Michal was in Yerushalayim. There's some Michal shal nafik about Chaloin. V'teres hamelech David mipos. Michal kol v'nei Hashem v'tives. V'amar Rav Yehuda v'yitem Rav Yosef shaklasa Michal lemitra fasei. Eleima says Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Yehuda that shaklasa Michal lemit tfasa. 1 second, I'm sorry, I lost the place over here. One more time. Time level no she used to answer Mishmain. Every time that my time, I'm going to make a kind of basra. Man can go shiz. I'm going to basra shiz. Oh, I have a Michal, who's also a wife. I'm going to have Egla zu Michal. V'lamnik shwa Egla shechaviva aleh kebayla keegla. V'cheinu oimer luli chashartem ba'golasi. But says Mara 1 second, but the Michal actually have children. Michal V'Shol Levlad. Adiyai Maisa, Rav Chista, Adiyai Maisa Avilav, V'yai Maisa Ayula, Michti Bana Michal Kachashav La B'Chevron, V'yai Maisa Michal V'Yishlayim, Avidech Sev, Michal V'Shol Nishka B'Chal Lem V'Teres Hamelech David V'Boz V'Chagel V'nei Hashem V'David V'Yom Yehuda V'Tim V'Yisrael Shaklasa Michal Lemet Fasei. And Michal received what she was due because she had become unable to have children. So what do we see? We see the day that Michal died, she cannot have children. Then until Yemaisai, there was a story that Michal did not have children, but afterwards she was able to. V'aksiv, and the Gemara continues with kashas about having king having 18 different wives. Ask the Gemara of V'aksiv, Yigach David Oipel Akshav and Ashim Yushalayim. The David added on wives in Yushalayim, so we see that he had more than 18. Says Gemara Lemnu Yishvan. So no, the ones that he added on were just to equal 18. My Nashem Umay Pilakshim. The pasuk said that David Melech had Nashim and Pilakshim. What's the chalik? Amar Vidam Rav Nashim Biksuba Kedushin Pilakshim B'lay Biksuba B'lay Kedushin. Amar Vidam Rav. Arba Meis Yiladim Hayil David. David HaMelech had 400 children. V'kulam and Eifas Tayar Haya. And all these children of David HaMelech were children of Eifas Tayar that David HaMelech married these women in battle. Magadle B'layir Tzayam. And they had long hair. Ve'kula and Yeshiv V'karnish Al Zav. They all sat on Krainai Shel Zav, carriages of gold. So as they went into the head of troops, and they were the strong people in the house of David. So says the Gemara, 1 second, what does it mean that David HaMelech had these Shomeshis Vaz Tayar? Remember you, Tamar Baz Vaz Tayar, he's a Shem Vataba, David Ba, Allah HaMelech, Claim Nena Memech, Fizach Ban Nesuyin, Ava Yachtami, Ave Sharialah. If you're going to tell me he was Nesuyin, how could it be? How could he have married his sister? How could Tamar have thought that David would tell Amnon to marry her? Shema Yuna Baz Vaz Tayar, Yisrael, Amnon Ra. Ushma Yunda Vashimin Achi David. Vayish Chacham v'Gayim Amri Yudamer Have Ish Chacham l'Risha. V'Yim Madu Ata Kachol Dal Ben Amelech v'Yim Lo Yunda V'Yishachav Al Mishka v'Yischal v'Gayim Ad ve'Ashtei Leini Esabriyos Esabriya. V'Ticha Hamishas v'Tituk Lefan Amar Rav Yudam Amar Rav Sha'asalai Minei Tigoin. Different types of dishes. Let's go up 3 lines one more time. Amnon Ram Shema Yonadav and Shema Achi David Yonadav Ish Chacham. And Amnon had a friend, Yonadav, the son of Shema, David's brother. Yonadav was a Chacham. Amar Rav Yudam Rav explained to Rav Yudam Rav. Nachmal, I think we read through this a little bit too fast. Ish Chacham L'Risha. He was a wise man in his ways of riches. Continues the Gemara. Vayomer. Again, this is not a whole pasuk. If you look at the psukim, it skips a few words. Dal ben Melech. Yonadav said to Amnon, why are you so thin? Why are you so gaunt? And Yonadav said to him, lie in your bed and pretend you are sick. And prepare the food in my sight. So Tamar went. And what she do? And she poured the cakes out before him. That what did Tamar do? She made different types of fried foods. Continues the psukim that after Amnon was together with Tamar, Amnon just violated Tamar. Amnon hated Tamar, a great sinner. What's the reason? What is the reason Amnon hated Tamar? Explains Rav Yitzchak, because a hair of hers became entangled, and made him into kroshivcha, unable to have children. Continues the Gemara of He says, I don't understand. What did she do? She didn't do anything wrong. Why is she the one that's at fault when he went and violated her? Elaima, rather say, explains the Gemara, says the Gemara that she did it purposely. She took a hair and she tied it around his aver in order to make him into a Kruv Shivcha. Ask the Gemara, is that true? What does it mean in the positive? What does it mean in the positive that says, and the name went amongst the Goyim for your beauty? She'ein lahen b'nois Yisrael lo sar b'isashachi. Says the Gemara, the Klal Yisrael's girls had neither sar hair in the Beis Arva, nor in the Beis Hashachi. And the Mefarshim here explains that in the times of Chazal, they didn't have, and this was until the Chorban Bayis Rishon, and this was a yoifi, this was a form of beauty of those girls. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Then how did Tamar have hair? Answers Gemara, Shiny Tamar, Debas, Yifas, Toyer Havai. Going full circle, Tamar was not always a Yiddish girl. I mean, she was, she was born, but she came from a Gaisha woman, a Fastor, a woman that was taken in battle. And to continue the Gemara, the story of Tamar and Amnon. Tamar put ashes on her head. And the garment that she wore, she ripped. Tanim Mishmeder of Yeshua, 2 lines in the bottom, and Karcha, Geder Gadol Gadra. By Tamar publicizing her humiliation, Tamar made an incredible Geder. Amru. Geder Gadol Gadra Tamar Baisa Amru B'nais Malachim Kach. That what? People said if B'nais Malachim Kach, if such could happen to B'nais Malachim, Leb'nais Ediyaitais, Halachas Kama V'Kama. Im Litznuais Kach. Someone who's a Tznuah, such as Tamar, such could happen to Bruchtzais, Halachas Kama V'Kama. So women would be very careful never to be entrapped, never to be secluded, as they learned the lesson from this incredible story. At that moment, Gazra ala Yichad v'ala Penuya. It was at the response to this story. Prior to this story, there was no Isser Yichad to a Penuya, to a single girl. But in response to the Mace of Tamar and Amnon, the Chazal were Geyser Yichad al Penuya. Asked the Gemara, whoa. Yichad daraisu. It's an daraisu. I'm Rabbi Yechon Shim Shimini. It's something Rabbis Lichem and Atar Minayin Shenemar. Ki Yisrael Achich Bani Mechav. V'chi Ben Mesis Ben Avin Mesis Alarm Lecha Ben Misyachim Imai. But Veinecha Misyachim Im Kol Araya Shabbat Torah. Of course, we have a beautiful book on Hilchos Yichad. Anyone wants, feel free to reach out. We'll try to send you a copy. But says the Gemara, what do you mean? Yichad is a din daraisa leima. So says the Gemara, Gazra al Yichad de Penuya wasn't stam and olach as Yichad, but rather on Yichad of a Penuya of an unmarried woman who was not in creed in Issa daraisa. That is where the Issa was created. Continues the Gemara of Adoniya ben Chagis Misnasei Leimar Ani Emloich. Adoniya ben Chagis made himself exalted, saying, Ani Emloich, I will be king. Amar Rav Yudah Maram Alamed Shebikesh. He requested to do what? Laholma v'loy hamaltai. He tried to put the crown on his head, and it did not fit on his head. The crown, the royal crown of David HaMelech. V'yasle rechav u'prashim chamisha meish ratzel lefanav. Adoniya put chariots and horsemen, 50 men running before him. Mayra Busa says Gemara, what was so special? Rav Yudah Marav Kulon Netuli Tchol v'chakuki kapois raglayim hayu. All the runners had no spleens and they had carved soles. And this was the runners were able to run even over thorny objects, special runners that Adoniya had in order to him to feign malchus. Continues the Gemara, quoting the Mishnah. Continues the new Mishnah. At the end of the narrow lines in Chaval V'Mabeis, Lo Yarba Lo Yisusim, a king is not allowed to have a lot of horses. Ela Kedei Markavtoi, only enough for his chariots. Because of his Zav Lo Yarba Lo, he can't have gold and silver. Ma'oid Ela Kedei Lita in Espanya, but rather only enough to pay his soldiers. Because of the Sefer Torah Lishmai, he has a personal Sefer Torah for his own sake. Yoitzi L'Milchama, he goes out to war. Moitzia Yimai, the king always takes his Sefer Torah with him. Nechlasu Machnisas Yimai, he comes in, he takes Torah with him. Yeshiv Adenu Yimai, Mesev, when he dines, he reclines. Ukenegdesh Nemar Vaisi Yimai Vakarabai Kol Yimechayav. The Sefer Torah of the king is always going to be with him. And we continue into the medium-sized lines. Tanu Rabbanan teaches the Gemara in the first din in the Mishnah. Lo Yarba Lo Yisusim, he's not allowed to have a lot of horses. Maybe he's not even allowed to have for his own chariot, for his own cavalry. For himself, he will not multiply. But he's able to have enough for his own chariots. Asks the Gemara, says the Gemara, what do we do with the pasuk that says he should not multiply susim? Susim habat lanim. What this means is idle horses that are doing nothing. Minayin. Ask the Gemara that the king is within this Isser of not having excess of horses, even one horse, if it is not doing anything. The pasuk says, in order to multiply, the extra pasuk teaching us even one extra horse doing nothing is not allowed. Says we understand. So we have this extra pasuk. What do we need? The loisase. Says the Gemara. No, excuse me. Besusim lamali. Answers the Gemara. Laver beloisase al kolsos v'sos. Each and every horse that is not being worked for the king is a separate isser. Time because Rachman Allah. So says the Gemara, what's the extra pasuk coming to teach us? That functional horses, cavalry horses, he's allowed to have extra. He does not let to have extra horses for himself, horses that are doing nothing. We continue because of the king should not have excessive money only to pay his wages. If you look at the elite in Espana, I would think he's not even allowed to have the money to pay for his wages. To pay the soldiers. Time explains the Gemara. I would think he's not even allowed to have to pay his wages. Explains the Gemara. But explains the Gemara. 1 second. Now that you're telling me that the pasuk is coming to teach us for a loy is for a drasha. So what do we do with extra loy? You're not allowed to have to him nashim. Explains the Gemara. Lemuute had yoitais. Comes to exclude commoners, that this isser is only an isser for the king. One would have thought that maybe it's an isser even for regular people not to have extra women. Again, if we remember, why would you not have these extra wives? Because they're going to pull you away from serving Hashem. So maybe one would think that this isser applies to everyone, not just to a king. Says Gemara, loy, only to the king has this isser. On the topic of horses, continues the Gemara discussing the horses of Shlomo HaMelech. We're 5 lines from the wide lines. Rav Yehuda Rami Ksif. Rav Yehuda asks a stira. Says in the Pasuk, Shlomo HaMelech had 40,000 lines of horses. A different Pasuk says that Shlomo HaMelech had 4,000 lines of horses. Susim haketzad ha'arbayim elef it's tabulai isayer kolecha v'echad by dalid alafin arvais susim. What exactly was this? There were 40,000 stables, and every stable had 4,000 horses. Quite the number of horses. V'im dalid alafin it's tabulai isayer kolecha v'echad by arbayim elef arvas susim. And if there were 4,000 stables, everyone had 40,000. So it's 40,000 times 4,000, we're talking about 1.6 million horses, if I just quickly did the math correctly. I hope I did. Rav Yitzchak Rami Ksiv Rav Yitzchak has a stira in case of Nachshav Yimei Shlomo Limeuma. Money was nothing in the days of Shlomo. Ksiv the Bas says V'yitin LeShlomo is like case of Yerushalayim Gavonim. And the king put silver in Yerushalayim as stones, like Kasha can Kodim Shas Shlomo as Bas Paroi Kanach Shanas Shlomo as Pas Paroi. When the pasuk says that silver had no value, it was before he married the daughter of Paro. But afterwards, when there was some little value, it was after he married the daughter of Paroi. Amar Rav Yitzchak b'Shashan Asal Shlomo as Bas Paroi Yard Gavriel. Malach Gabriel came down, and it's kind of He put a spear in the sea, Vehela, Sirtain, and the formed a sandbank, Va'ola Nivna Krach, Gadol Shabaraimi. And due to this act of Shlomo Melech married Bas Paroi, that's what the city of Rome was created. It says the Gemara of Amar Rav Yitzchak, what did Shlomo do wrong? Two reasons of the Torah were revealed and increased a terrible mistake. The reason was given and Shlomo HaMelech messed up because he thought he could withstand the temptation. Is the second pasuk of So we see that both of these psukim, whether it was marrying extra women, whether it was not having extra horses, we see Shlomo HaMelech erred in both of them. That's the reason why the reasons are not given for the psukim. Stop over here. We'll pick it up in this King Sefer Torah in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.